Imagine a silence so heavy it hums against your eardrums, a static noise that doesn't come from the room around you, but from the relentless machinery grinding inside your own skull. You are lying in the dark, the city asleep outside your window, yet your mind is running a marathon on a treadmill that has no stop button, dissecting conversations from 3 years ago and calculating the probability of disasters that haven't even been invented yet. It is a specific kind of exhaustion, isn't it? Not the tiredness of the body, which can be cured by sleep, but a weary bruising of the soul that comes from holding up the weight of the universe's complexity on your shoulders, terrified that if you blink, you might miss a crucial pattern that explains why everything feels so dangerously fragile. You are sitting in that corner of your life where the lights are dim and the air tastes like stale coffee and unsaid words, watching the world move in a blur of simple, enviable chaos while you remain frozen in analysis. You look at others laughing at a joke you dissected 10 minutes ago, and you wonder if there is a defect in your wiring that traded happiness for understanding, leaving you stranded on an island of insight where no boats ever dock. Have you ever felt completely invisible even when you are standing in the center of a crowded room? Not because people cannot see you, but because the version of you they see is just a meticulously crafted hologram designed to hide the fact that you are analyzing them, the room, and your own loneliness all at once. You walk through your days with the practiced efficiency of a high-functioning machine, likely hovering somewhere in that nebulous zone between 25 and 40, old enough to have built a solid career, but young enough to wonder if this is truly all there is. To your colleagues and acquaintances, you are the unshakable rock, the architect of solutions, who speaks in calm, measured tones that instantly soothe the panic of others. You wake up before the alarm, your mental checklist already scrolling behind your eyelids like code on a screen, organizing the chaos of the coming day before your feet even touch the cold floor. But this competence is a heavy coat you wear to keep the shivering out. You have perfected the art of appearing entirely present while hovering 3 feet above your own body, observing the performance of your life rather than actually living it, convinced that if you stop analyzing the script, the actor will forget the lines. Your apartment reflects this rigorous internal architecture, meticulously organized, books aligned by subject, surfaces free of dust, yet lacking the messy warmth of a space where mistakes are allowed to happen. The light that floods your living room in the evenings is often the harsh blue glow of a laptop screen, or the clinical white of energy-saving bulbs, illuminating a silence that feels more like a doctor's waiting room than a sanctuary. You stand by the window with a cup of tea that has gone cold in your hand, watching the reflection of your own eyes in the dark glass. That 1,000-yard stare that sees through the concrete and the traffic to the underlying equations of human suffering. It is a lonely kingdom you rule over, a sterile environment where you are safe from the messiness of unpredictable emotions, but also tragically safe from the possibility of being truly touched by another human being. The wound reveals itself not in what you say, but in the long, suffocating pauses you fill with logic when someone cries in front of you. You offer them a handkerchief and a perfectly reasoned solution, dissecting their pain into manageable components, because seeing raw, unedited emotion makes your skin crawl with a helplessness you cannot name. You were the child praised for being so mature for your age, the one who learned early on that love was a currency paid in exchange for being smart, quiet, and low maintenance. Now, you find yourself scrolling through your phone contacts late at night, realizing with a sinking heart that you are everyone's therapist, but nobody's priority. You desperately want to reach out, to say, "I am hurting too," but the words die in your throat, choked by the terrifying certainty that your utility is the only reason they keep you around. You treat every interaction like a chess game where you must foresee 12 moves ahead to ensure you aren't blindsided by the unexpected. You rehearse phone calls before you make them, drafting flowcharts of potential responses in your head, convinced that if you can just predict every variable, you will finally be safe from the chaos of rejection. It is a grueling, invisible labor that leaves you drained before breakfast, a constant spinning of gears that produces nothing but anxiety, wrapped in the guise of preparedness. You tell yourself this is wisdom, that you are simply more observant than the rest, but deep down you suspect it is actually cowardice, a sophisticated way of hiding from the raw, unscripted collisions that make life actually worth living. The world feels less like a playground and more like a minefield where only your intellect keeps you from detonating. Consider the dinner party you attended last week. where you sat amidst the clatter of silverware and the roar of overlapping conversations, feeling like an astronaut tethered to a distant planet. Someone told a story about a trivial mistake they made, and the table erupted in warm, chaotic laughter, while you sat there analyzing the sociology of the group dynamic, forcing a smile that didn't reach your eyes. You watched their hands touch shoulders, their eyes lock in shared amusement, and you felt a thick sheet of glass slide down between you and them. You were there, physically occupying space, but your spirit was miles away, dissecting the acoustics of the room rather than feeling the joy of the moment. It wasn't that you didn't want to join in. It was that you had forgotten the language of lightness, your tongue too heavy with serious thoughts to dance with theirs. To cope with this isolation, you retreat into the fortress of your own intelligence, looking down from your ivory tower with a mixture of pity and disdain for those who live so unthinkingly. You tell yourself that their happiness is shallow, that they are sleepwalking through existence while you are the only one brave enough to stare into the abyss of reality. This intellectual arrogance is your morphine. It numbs the stinging ache of not belonging by convincing you that you are simply too advanced for the mundane. You wrap yourself in complex theories and cynical observations, wearing your alienation like a badge of honor, pretending that being understood is a luxury you do not need because you have the cold comfort of being right. But the view from the top of the tower is freezing, and the air is simply too thin to sustain a human heart. Yet, in the quiet moments, between the noise of the day and the silence of the night, a terrifying thought begins to leak through the cracks of your armor. You catch a glimpse of a couple arguing on the street, or a child crying over a dropped ice cream, and you feel a sudden sharp pang of envy for the raw honesty of their experience. They are messy, irrational, and completely alive, while you are pristine, logical, and slowly turning to stone. You start to realize that your frantic analysis isn't solving the puzzle of life. It's preventing you from touching the pieces. The intelligence you prized so highly has become a labyrinth of your own making, a beautiful, intricate cage where you pace back and forth, starving for a simple, unexplained feeling, wondering if you would trade all your brilliance for just one day of blissful, ignorant peace. The breaking point arrives not with a thunderous crash, but with a terrifying, silent malfunction of your internal operating system. It happens on a Tuesday night that feels indistinguishable from any other, as you lay in the suffocating quiet of your room, trying to rationalize a sudden wave of crushing despair. You attempt to apply your usual methodology, identify the trigger, categorize the emotion, and deduce the solution. But tonight, the variables refuse to align. Your mind frantically spins its wheels, generating theories and counter-theories, dissecting your childhood, your career, and your chemical balance. Yet the pain remains obstinately, brutally present. You realize with a jolt of panic that knowing why you are drowning does not stop the water from filling your lungs. Your intellect, that faithful sword you have wielded for decades to keep the chaos at bay, suddenly feels like a paper knife against a tidal wave. You stumble into the bathroom and grip the cold porcelain of the sink, your knuckles turning white as you stare into your own dilated pupils. For years, you believed that your constant analysis was a fortress built to keep you safe from the unpredictability of the world. But in this trembling moment, you see the walls for what they truly are: a prison cell. The paradox hits you with the force of a physical blow. The very mechanism you use to avoid pain is the exact thing that has guaranteed your suffering. You have been so busy dissecting the flower that you killed it before you could ever smell its fragrance. You are not the master of your mind. You are its captive, starving for a morsel of genuine reality while trapped in a banquet of abstract concepts. The realization that you have intellectualized your own life into non-existence brings you to your knees. For the first time in your adult life, you stop fighting the current. You slide down the wall to the tiled floor, pulling your knees to your chest. And you do the one thing your logic always forbade. You surrender. You let the sob rise from your diaphragm, raw and ugly, unpolished by thought and unexplained by theory. You do not ask yourself why you are crying. You simply cry. The sentry in your brain, that tireless guard who demands a password for every feeling, finally falls asleep at his post. It is terrifying to feel this exposed, to be a raw nerve ending without the insulation of cynicism, but amidst the shaking and the tears, there is a strange, ancient relief. You are finally touching the ground. You are broken, yes, but for the first time in years, you are entirely, undeniably real. The tears dry on your face, leaving your skin tight, and the ferocious noise in your head settles into a tentative silence. It is not the silence of repression you are used to, maintained by sheer willpower, but a natural quiet, like the air after a thunderstorm has spent its fury. You sit on the cold tiles, your body heavy with a fatigue that feels curiously clean, stripped of the neurotic tension that usually holds your spine rigid. There is no triumphant fanfare, no sudden rush of clarity that solves the riddle of existence. There is only the rhythmic sound of your breathing, unburdened by the need to justify its necessity. You realize the world did not end just because you lost control of it. The walls are standing, the clock is ticking, but the frantic need to hold the ceiling up with your thoughts has simply evaporated. In this stillness, you understand that your intellect was never the enemy, but you had tasked it with an impossible job, solving the problem of being human as if it were a math equation. You look at your hands resting on your knees, seeing them not as tools, but as physical anchors in a physical world. You accept that you will always be a deep thinker, seeking patterns and meanings, but you no longer have to be a slave to endless interrogations. It is a humble resignation, a quiet treaty between your terrified ego and your beating heart. You do not need to be the smartest person in the room to deserve a seat at the table. You just need to be present, messy, and occasionally wrong, without the crushing fear that an error in logic equates to a failure of character. You stand up slowly and walk to the window, pushing it open to let the night air wash over your face. The city below is still a chaotic sprawl, but instead of analyzing the patterns of the traffic, you simply feel the chill of the wind against your damp skin. It is a sensation devoid of theory, a pure, unmediated experience that requires no filing or cross-referencing. You watch a car drive by, its headlights sweeping across the pavement, and you let it just be a car, let the light just be light. There is a profound sadness in realizing how much time you spent dissecting the menu instead of tasting the meal, but also a gentle hope. You are not cured of your complexity, nor have you won a victory, but you have found a way to step out of the observatory and just stand under the stars. True wisdom, you begin to see, is not found in the accumulation of answers, but in the brave refusal to need them all the time. Your depth is not a defect to be fixed, nor is your sensitivity a weakness to be calloused over. They are simply the ocean you swim in. But even the deepest ocean has a surface where the sun hits the water, and the waves rock gently, indifferent to the dark trenches below. You do not need to live in the abyss to prove you understand it. It is permissible to float, to let the current carry you for a while without checking the coordinates, to trust that you will not drown simply because you stopped struggling against the tide. The mind makes a wonderful servant, but a terrible master, and you have finally learned how to give it the night off. So, when the sun rises tomorrow, try to greet it not as a phenomenon of planetary rotation, but simply as the return of light. Pour your coffee, and let the warmth of the ceramic mug be the only truth you need to verify for the next 10 minutes. There is a quiet grace in being ordinary, in allowing yourself to be a noun rather than a verb, existing, without the relentless pressure to explain your existence. You have spent a lifetime studying the map. Perhaps now, finally, you are ready to fold it up, put it in your pocket, and just walk. The world is waiting for you, not to understand it, but to feel it. Can you allow yourself the terrifying, beautiful luxury of just being here?